Here once again in Atlanta, Georgia, with Dan Tortora. I'm John Garcia Jr. with CuesNation.com, of course, under the beautiful Fox Sports umbrella. Not so beautiful out here.
Wish we had an umbrella out here. Where are you, Fox?
But let's talk about this matchup. Syracuse, Michigan. Plenty of build-up. They had almost a week to prepare. Each side did, so there's certainly going to be some things that we're not going to account for right now. But taking what we know from the games that we've seen, obviously Syracuse we've seen a lot more, but Michigan we've all been able to see how hot they are offensively, scoring seemingly at will. Let's start in the backcourt. Trey Burke, probably the best point guard in the country. Let's talk about that matchup against the zone, against Michael Carter-Williams, and the converse of that, which hasn't been talked about enough, which is Syracuse's offense against Michigan's defense.
Yeah, I think the first thing, with Trey Burke, looking at him, this is a guy who wants to get out and run. You're going to see two teams that want to play transition basketball, and Trey Burke is going to be a big part of that. I think the best game that you could speak of is the game that kept him in it, which is the game against Kansas, where you see a guy who in the first 20 minutes, no points as a starter, 23 points in the second half, and overtime combined 9 for 17. The guy that hit the long three, he hit that three.
Half-court three.
Pretty much. This is a guy who was hitting the three from the 300 level. So, to hit that shot, a big shot, those are the shots that really you only see in the NCAA tournament, and it kept him in it. It switches the momentum, and a guy like Trey Burke is going to be dangerous, and Syracuse has played against teams that don't always have the best shooters in this tournament, and now you're looking at a team where they have to account for that. They're going to have to account for outside shooting, and Trey Burke's a big part of that.
And I think what was big about Burke is you talked about the Kansas game. Unbelievable scorer, unbelievable shooter from where he was shooting from for the most part.
Yeah.
He got hot as a jump shooter, and he willed his team to victory. Nobody can argue that. But then in the following game against Florida, arguably right along with Syracuse as probably the best defenses in this tournament, he distributes. He leads the team in a whole different way. And I think that's the biggest thing about Trey Burke that intrigues me is because Jim Boeheim, as you told me earlier when we were eating lunch, he's known for saying, I'm going to dictate who's taking the shot. Yeah. So if you say, I'm going to let Trey Burke take the shot, he's going to take them and probably make them. But if you say, I'm going to let anybody but Trey Burke take the shot, he's proven now on a big stage in an Elite Eight game that he can do so. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, definitely. When you go up against a team like Florida and you're in that place of the Elite Eight, you're expecting a close matchup, 79-59, 20-point victory for Michigan. Says a lot. And, you're looking at Trey Burke on one side who has the ability to make the shot but also defer. And then you look at Michael Carter-Williams who's found his way back to deferring well and scoring when he needs to. So I think when you look at this matchup, you're looking at 2 point guards that, some people say Trey Burke is better, some people say Michael Carter-Williams is better, but the truth in the matter is both know when to pass in the most opportune time, which is right here at the Final Four and moving forward. And at the same time, they both had the shot. Michael Carter-Williams has worked on his shot a lot. Lazara Sims and I spoke about that and what Michael Carter-Williams has tried to do to make sure that he's a better shooter. And Trey Burke, you obviously know that he can shoot. And Michael Carter, this is an assist machine. He loves to be an assist guy. So, I think both teams are going to have to account for the fact that there's going to be some deferring. And obviously, if you're going to go to the rim, they're not going to be afraid to take it there.
So two excellent point guards in this game that love to go up-tempo, as you alluded to at the opening of that statement. So we can almost consider them a wash. For these purposes, let's just say they're a wash.
Okay.
So then you transfer to the big men. Of course, the 2-3 zone, again, against Mitch McGary, who's really emerged over the last month as the prospect we all thought he could be. Most people saw him really get the better of Nerlens Noel on national television at the end of the recruiting cycle last year. And he said, who's that guy? That's Mitch McGary. That's the guy from Michigan. That's the guy Syracuse is going to have to deal with.
Absolutely. Mitch McGary, I think the biggest thing about him is that he's a freshman. So, I think that there's a lot of danger there because he's been able to come on and learn so quickly. This is someone that obviously you have to account for. The issue with Michigan when you look at a team like Syracuse is that in a 2-3 zone, you want to account for, okay, there's going to be a few good shooters, but we want to make sure that we take care of the middle. If you're speaking from Syracuse's level, you want to keep people out of the high post, you want to keep them out of the paint. But McGary's a good passer, as you and I have spoken about. So being a good passer and having 4 shooters that are more than willing to take the three-point shot or the jump shot,
dangerous.
It's going to put Syracuse in a place where you really have to guard 5 people. You have to account for everybody on the floor. And against a Marquette team, the shooters weren't as good. Against Montana, California, they stop the shooters. Stop a guy like Crabbe, and you do different things with the defense. But I think with this Michigan team, Syracuse is facing the best offense that they're going to face. And Mitch McGary, even though he's 6'10", you expect the point guard to be the catalyst. This guy getting the ball on the inside in the paint can really start off the offense for them and just send it out like spokes on a wheel, send it wherever he wants to, you know what I mean? So
I agree. I think Mitch McGary is the entire key to this whole game. I think the way he handles himself against the length of the zone, against the pressure of the zone, will dictate what Michigan can do and ultimately what Syracuse can prevent. But not only his passing, as you said, he's a good passer, but how creative he is as a passer, I think is something that's overlooked. In the last game against Florida, you saw him go behind the back to save a ball. You saw him no look underneath for an easy dunk. I believe it was Tim Hardaway Jr. who was on the receiving end of that. So how creatively he can kind of give some misdirection to the zone could lead to more points for Michigan and obviously more trouble for Syracuse. So that's definitely maybe the bigger matchup, McGary versus SU's bigs, than even Carter Williams versus Burke. X factors. We'll go out with this. Give me one guy on each team, or actually you give me one guy on Michigan's team, or one guy on Syracuse team, and I'll do one guy on Michigan's team who could really change the entire game with them breaking out and performing the best on the biggest stage.
Well, you talk about a big stage performer, and I'm going to have to say the X Factor is James Sutherland. This is a guy who, the team went 4-2 without him, but bringing him back in, the team admitted the fact that, it takes time. Why did they lose 4 out of the last 5? Because you have an atmosphere. Then you have to change that atmosphere. Jeremy Grant is a big part of that change in the atmosphere and what had to go on with him and his playing time. So when you bring Sutherland back in, it's going to take time. You see in the Big East tournament that he's really locked on. When you have 4 good shooters on Michigan, James Sutherland is going to have to do more than shoot 1 or 2 threes and make them. This may be a game where he has to make 4, has to make 5. I would say more on the level of 5.
Wow.
That he's going to have to be out there and he's going to have to be a prolific shooter, a strong shooter. They're going to have to find ways to get him open. And, his length on the defensive side is going to help with McGary, and I think it's going to be a big part of getting out to the shooters in the corner. So I would say all throughout, usually you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but this senior is learning how to be a better player with no other time to play. Single elimination, may never play the game again. Who knows where he's going to play? So at this moment in time, it's not just James Sutherland, the three-point shooter. It's James Sutherland, the shooter that can shoot from beyond the arc, inside the arc, can dish the ball into Raheem Christmas or Baikita, and can kick out to Brandon Trish, Michael Carter-Williams for their chances. And he's got the length on the defense. So I think James Sutherland, you know what? Syracuse didn't have him for 6 games. You have to remind people why you're on the court and what you mean to this team. You didn't have Arinze Onuaku. You didn't have Fab Melo.
Yeah.
Now, James Sutherland is that guy that you really need to have if you want to hope to win a championship.
And I'll go, ironically, you picked James. I'll go with the guy who's probably going to guard him, and that's Tim Hardaway Jr. And I do this simply because he's going to face a different test against this Syracuse zone. He missed a lot of wide open shots against Florida, was really the only Michigan player who wasn't as hot as can be from the field, but he stayed confident, and that's the key. Just like McGary's creative passing is the key, I think Hardaway's confidence offensively could be a key for Michigan, because if you miss 8, 9, 10 shots in a row, taking that 11th shot could be the one that swings the momentum, the one that brings you back. And I think his ability to show that against a good Florida defense is going to be challenged, because this Syracuse defense isn't going to leave you open as much as Florida did. And if they do once or twice, they're going to suffocate you and maybe even trap you in that corner that Hardaway loves even more. So his confidence, I think, is a big key on the wing for Michigan, although everybody thought I was going to say, what, Stauskas, is that his name? Yeah, he got hot, but hard to duplicate that performance. So we'll see what the real X factors are once they play the game Saturday night. That's our take from the CuseNation.com crew of Dan Tortora, and I'm John Garcia Jr.